Breaking free from the victim mentality. A call to Black Americans. The narrative of Black Americans as perpetual victims of white oppression has become deeply ingrained in American discourse, but it's time to reassess its validity and utility in today's society. The story of victimhood is as old as time, transcending race, geography, and even species, as those in power have often sought to differentiate themselves from those they rule. But does clinging to this narrative truly serve the Black community? Or does it risk perpetuating the very cycle of oppression and division it seeks to combat? Historical parallels. The French-speaking British nobility and the Indian caste system. Throughout history, groups have sought to elevate themselves above others by creating and reinforcing social hierarchies. In medieval England, the British nobility spoke French, a language that set them apart from the English-speaking peasantry. This linguistic divide was more than just a cultural difference. It was a tool of oppression, a way to distinguish the ruling class from those they deemed inferior. The peasants were treated not merely as a different race, but as a different species altogether dehumanized and subjugated. Similarly, the caste system in India, with its rigid hierarchy of warriors, priests, servants, and the casteless, has long dictated social standing and determined one's fate. The casteless were treated with disdain and contempt, often considered less than human by those in higher castes. These examples illustrate that the dynamics of power and oppression are not unique to any one race or era. They are a universal phenomenon. The pitfalls of perpetual victimhood. While it is crucial to acknowledge the historical and ongoing injustices faced by Black Americans, it is equally important to recognize the dangers of adopting a perpetual victim mentality. The narrative of victimhood can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, trapping individuals and communities in a cycle of resentment and disempowerment. When we view ourselves primarily as victims, we risk losing sight of our agency and potential. We may become so focused on our grievances that we fail to recognize the opportunities available to us. Moreover, by continually identifying an external oppressor to blame for our problems, we may unwittingly perpetuate the very systems of oppression we seek to dismantle. The oppressed, in their quest for justice, can become the oppressors, seeking retribution rather than reconciliation. This cycle of victimization and revenge only serves to deepen divisions and prolong suffering. A new narrative. Empowerment and responsibility. It's time for Black Americans to embrace a new narrative, one that acknowledges the past but does not allow it to dictate the future. This narrative is rooted in empowerment, personal responsibility, and the recognition of our own potential to effect change. Empowerment begins with rejecting the idea that we are defined by our oppression. While racism and discrimination are real and must be confronted, they do not have to be the defining features of our identity. We have the power to define ourselves on our terms, to pursue our goals, and to achieve success in spite of the obstacles we may face. Personal responsibility means recognizing that, while external forces can and do impact our lives, we ultimately have control over our actions and decisions. We can choose to focus on what we can control, our education, our careers, our relationships, and work to improve our circumstances from within. Finally, we must recognize that true change comes not from punishing those who have wronged us, but from building bridges and creating a more just and equitable society for all. This requires moving beyond a simplistic narrative of victims and oppressors and embracing a more nuanced understanding of human nature and social dynamics. Conclusion: charting a new path forward. The narrative of Black Americans as victims of white oppression is a powerful one, but it is not the only narrative available to us. By recognizing the universal nature of power dynamics and oppression, we can begin to see our struggles in a broader context. More importantly, by rejecting the victim mentality and embracing empowerment, responsibility, and reconciliation, we can chart a new path forward, one that allows us to rise above our past and build a brighter future for ourselves and our communities. It's time to stop playing the victim and start writing our own story. A story of resilience, strength, and triumph. A story that acknowledges the past but is not defined by it. A story that empowers us to be the architects of our own destiny.